You're exactly right. And we heard Judge Cahill go on to caution elected officials and say, I urge you not to weigh in just hours before or half a day before the president himself weighs in. Look, I'm glad he at least waited until the jury was sequestered.
Right.
But I think that the country is such a tinderbox right now, especially Minneapolis. There's so much hurt, so much pain. And I think it's the role of the president of the United States to stay back, to not inflame the tensions. I like that he called the family of George Floyd. President Trump did too, but it's such a tinderbox moment, and I think he should have just reserved comment and said he's praying for the family, as we all are.
Okay, so Trump's former press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, doesn't exactly have a great track record for not being tone deaf, but this may actually be #1 on the list. So that we're clear, Kayleigh said, I think it's the role of the President of the United States to stay back, to not inflame the tensions. Kayleigh McEnany said that. The former press secretary for Donald Trump. Like, has Kayleigh McEnany ever met Kayleigh McEnany? This woman was the mouthpiece for someone whose only function was to inflame tensions. In fact, I'd have been floored if Donald Trump was capable of not inflaming tensions with anything he ever said or did before, during, or after his presidency. He has the unique, almost superhuman ability to only and always make things worse. In fact, Trump quite literally inflamed tensions on this very issue. When George Floyd's killing sparked protests this summer, Trump decided on an impromptu trip from the Rose Garden, where he'd been speaking, to St. John's Episcopal Church across the street. And in order to get there, the Trump administration ordered the peaceful protesters standing outside of the White House tear gas so that he could stand in front of a church and hold a Bible in the air for a photo op. And that followed his comments from a few days earlier, where he tweeted, just spoke to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way, any difficulty and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And that was followed by a conference call with governors where he said, quote, you have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. You have to dominate. So yeah, textbook de-escalation techniques, reducing tensions like you've never seen before, a gentle calm washed over the nation. The fact is that what we've seen, and will continue to see, from these Fox News hosts and former Trump administration officials, as if there's any distinction between the two groups anymore, is this play acting that they were all born on January 20th. And they'll wail about, why isn't Joe Biden seeking unity or bipartisanship? As if those people who breathlessly backed Donald Trump for 4 years have a leg to stand on when it comes to seeking unity. They'll cry about the deficit without acknowledging that they sat there and applauded while tax cuts for the ultra-rich added almost $8 trillion to the debt in just Trump's one term alone. They'll screech about election security as if they didn't line up behind the guy who tried to unilaterally anoint himself the winner of an election that he lost. On issue after issue, the same people who were on the wrong side of these questions for the last 4 years have decided that they're suddenly the perfect messengers now that Joe Biden's in office. Convenient, huh? But all this does is serve as proof that those on the right don't actually care about the issues they're presenting. They care about grasping at whatever they can to use as a cudgel against the Democrats. And so even when it is so blatantly, egregiously hypocritical, still they'll say it. Because when shame is out of the equation, there's really no limit on what people are willing to say. And by the way, just on the substance of Kayleigh's attacks, she takes aim at Joe Biden for saying this.
I've come to know George's family, not just in passing. I've spent time with him. I spent time with his little daughter, Gianna. You should see this beautiful child. And his brother, both brothers, as a matter of fact. I can only imagine the pressure and anxiety they're feeling. And so I waited till the jury was sequestered, and I called. And as I wasn't going to say anything about it, but Thelonious said today on television, and he accurately said it was a private conversation because Joe understands what it's like to go through loss. And they're a good family, and they're calling for peace and tranquility, no matter what that verdict is. I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view. I wouldn't say that unless the jury was sequestered now, not hear me say that. But so we just talked to them. I want to know how they were doing, just personally. And talked about personal things.
But he even admits that he waited until the jury was sequestered, so his words quite literally had zero impact on this trial. But the other point then is that Kayleigh takes issue with Biden having chosen a side here. She's suggesting that even Biden having an opinion at all here will only serve to raise tensions, which goes to tell you that Kayleigh thinks there's merit to both sides. Because while most people who watched what Derek Chauvin did can clearly say how wrong it was, Kayleigh's suggestion that this is some sort of controversial take for Biden goes to show that she doesn't think this is black and white. Think about it. If she thought what Derek Chauvin did was wrong, she could simply admit it. She could simply say, yeah, of course a guilty verdict would be the right thing to see. But that she equivocates here and pins the blame on Biden for giving that statement instead of simply acknowledging what Derek Chauvin did was wrong, in effect betrays her own opinion on the matter. All she did here was tell on herself. So let's be clear, the problem isn't Joe Biden weighing in on some hot button issue. The problem here is that Fox News and Trump administration officials are so deeply entrenched on the wrong side of justice that even on the issue of a police officer slowly murdering an American, still they aren't able to come out and say that it's wrong. So if anyone's words are inappropriate here, I can assure you that it's not Joe Biden's. To see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. And for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I discuss the week's top stories and interview major players in the world of politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.